welcome to the Down the Street Social Podcast, Harry Sweeny. It's good to have you back on the show. How's your offie going?
Pretty good, actually. About a week into it now. I've just been hanging around Nice. It started a bit earlier than originally planned. I got really sick after Roubaix, actually. Came down with a pretty nasty cold, so I didn't race Paris Tours in the end, and just called it a year, which was pretty nice to finish on Roubaix.
Yeah.
We have 3 more weeks off now and then get back into it.
Yeah, that's nice. That's nice. Surprise, surprise, you got sick after Roubaix.
Yeah, well, I think I actually got off the best of a lot of people. I have a mate here that raced and he got like a proper bacterial infection and had to go see a doctor. It was real serious on the antibiotics for a week. So I think a cold's probably the best I could have had.
Is it the hardest event you've ever done?
Yeah, hands down.
Like by a long way?
In terms of power and stuff, it's quite similar, like on par with what I would have done in the past. But the thing that made it difficult was just the mental focus. I think I was expecting a little bit that maybe a break would go or maybe it would start racing. And then it just started racing straight away. And that was the velodrome. Like it didn't ease up at all. And because we had such a big move, I didn't actually realize that it was a split, and it just like suddenly you're in a 30-man front group and like everyone's just riding full gas. So yeah, I think a lot of it was a mental focus. Like usually in the break, it settles down a bit after like an hour or so, like when you've established your lead. But after an hour of being in the break, you hit the first cobble sector and it's just chaos for the rest of the day. So there was never really a lull. And I think like you could see in everyone's faces by the end, they were just completely like trashed, I guess.
Yeah. Were you nervous in the run-in? Especially seeing the women's race on the Saturday. It was predicted to be wet, brackets worse.
Yeah, we were. Well, I knew it was going to be a wet Roubaix pretty much from the day after Worlds. And that was a bit hard to wrap my head around. And then I saw the women's race and it was like incredible just seeing some of them surfing, like Voss going around us, and we're all on the bus just like absolutely like just gripped by the race.
You were like squirming, like you were sitting there like,
yeah. You know what that feeling's like when you're sliding around on the cobbles, and to some degree you have control, but when you're watching someone else do it, you just like at any point they're just going to drop like a sack on these cobbles. So it makes it real hard to watch, I think. But I knew, I sort of was a bit nervous. And then on the start line was like no race I've ever done before. Like any other race, there's guys talking on the start line, like seeing what they're up to, catching up. Like even at the start of the tour, everyone's like having banter like they're at a Sunday ride, the first stage of the tour. And then we're on the start line of Roubaix and everyone's silent like they're at a funeral. And you look around, their sunnies on, you can see their eyes like they're just like shaking almost. So it was really intimidating, not because I knew what the race was, but just because everyone else was nervous because everyone else was nervous. So yeah, it was really highly anticipated by the time we hit the cobbles, I guess.
Yeah. Did you get a chance to ride on the cobbles in the condition that they were?
No. I've ridden the cobbles a fair bit in the wet, like when I was under 19 in Belgium, but it's been quite a while since I've ridden cobbles in the wet like that. And especially as you get closer to Roubaix, they're just shocking. Like it's not really even, it's like if you're not racing for the win, you're just making it to Roubaix. And without that adrenaline anymore, it's like really just like, oh.
Yeah. Like I've ridden Belgian cobbles before, but and when they were like semi-wet, but that was like next level wet. It wasn't just that they were super wet. It looked like there was like a pretty much just mud just everywhere.
Yeah, and that was actually what made it quite difficult and even made the race split immediately, is because usually when it's dry, you can ride the bad lines like where the wheels of the car go, so on either side. But because it was wet, you could only ride in the very middle, which meant there was only space for one rider every time you hit the cobbled sector, unless you wanted to ride in the sides where the wheels were. But the problem with that is it was so rained out that you can't see where the holes were. So if you're riding on the side, you're just taking a risk that you're going to go straight into a hole and it'll be like your day done.
Yeah. And as Gianni showed towards the end there, it's not even safe riding in the middle, solo, along the cobbles.
Yeah, it's I think it's something that you have to have a feel for. Like you either have a feel for it or you don't. And I think you can see in the recon, there was a lot of guys or a few teams that changed their rosters the day after recon because they hit like one wet sector on the cobbles and they just decked it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was in one way it sort of made the cobbles safer and it made the rest of the race more dangerous, I think, because there's normally a fight, but the fight this time was just incredible. Like we were hitting cobble sectors and we're in a breakaway and you'd think like, oh, I'm in a break, it's pretty safe. And you'd be like rolling through and guys would stop rolling like a kilometer from the cobble sector just so they can whack you right before it and hit the front in front of you. It's just, yeah, it's really, it's just real different racing.
Yeah, I don't know if you would have seen it, but with like talking about like squirming, watching run-ins to sections in the women's race on Saturday, in the first sector that they were coming into, it wasn't even the first sector they were coming into. It was like 10 Ks out from the first sector in the main bunch. It looked horrible. Like everyone was trying to be at the front. It was filthy wet. It looked disgusting. And it was only like a matter of time before people started hitting the deck.
Yeah. And the other huge issue that I never thought of as well is most of the cobble sectors are straight and you're riding in the wheel, focusing on not crashing basically the whole day. And if the person in front drops the wheel, you don't know until you come around a corner or get off the cobble sector because you can't follow a different line from them. And you're spending the whole time blinking the mud out of your eyes. So there was a few times actually in the break where I didn't get the position I wanted into the cobble sector and I was stuck behind someone. And they might have just dropped, but you get to the end of the cobble sector and you're 500 meters off the back of the front of the bunch because you didn't know that there was a gap that was opening. So there was a lot of times during the day where that happened and I sort of had to make a big effort to get back, and it really makes you realize how huge of a difference it is to be the first 5 wheels versus the last 5 wheels.
So you guys were like racing into each sector because you made the breakaway, but it was like you said at the start, it was almost like a split. It was a massive group.
Yeah, I think what initially happened is there was like 5 of us maybe that we attacked, and then it was in the gutter, like trying to make it real hard for everyone. And then all 5 of us or something sat up, and then everyone started screaming from the back, like, we've got a group go. And I think it just went into the gutter behind us and the group just split. Someone drops a wheel and that was it. But even from then, it was like guys were trying to screw you over from the very beginning. And then guys missing turns, people sitting on, people crashing, like Kung crashed out on one of the first roundabouts of the day, I guess on some oil. Yeah, and then it was just racing into every corner, like Moscon putting your elbows into ribs into like the first cobble sector, the second cobble sector. Yeah, I don't think he was anyone's favorite rider that day, I'll put it that way.
Well, are you going head to head with him?
Yeah, like you just come into a cobble sector and you're riding like 5th wheel or something, and you're like, oh, I'm pretty safe here. And Moscon will come like up around the bank of the, and then like elbow into the side of you and then come through and yeah.
Yeah, it's but also like one of the hardest, maybe the hardest breakaway in the world to make, Roubaix breakaway, and then to have.
I think hard to make if you don't know like how it's going to happen, or I honestly don't really know how it happened because I just happened to be there. Like I was on the front foot, and you know what it's like with echelons, like the echelons formed and you don't know that there's echelons behind you because it's not hard to make it, but you have to be there.
Yeah. And then did you feel comfortable? Like it looked good. Like you looked like you were comfortable in the move because as the race went on, like Kung crashed out, but there was people getting hooped for different reasons, like for pretty much the entire race. Well, it was for the entire race because we ended up with Gianni solo off the front. That was from the breakaway.
Yeah, well, I felt really quite good early on, but I knew it was going to be a bit of a stretch because I come into Worlds. It was like I think I'd say borderline, like done a little bit too much in hindsight, but I knew that I sort of needed to do that because it had only been 4.5 weeks since I broke my collarbone. So I sort of had to like take the risk of that. So after Worlds, I took 3 days off and really freshened up. And then coming into Roubaix, I felt great. And then probably for 4 hours at least, I felt really good. And yeah, it was perfect situation for me. I had a teammate up the road from the breakaway for so much of the race, so I didn't have to do anything. Um, and yeah, I think it sort of just, I got a little bit zapped and then, yeah, I just ran out of legs, to be honest, in the end, which is sort of a bit of a bitter pill to swallow when you see how it forms. Like I had two opportunities to be at the front of the race initially when I was in the front, and then when I got dropped from the front and Van der Poel came past, and then I got dropped from that move as well. So that sucked because like when I first finished, I was like, oh, that was a good first Roubaix. But then like watching it back again, I'm like, that could have been something a lot more special.
Yeah, yeah, and like I remember watching that cobbled sector where Van der Poel came past. You were like, you were there. You were on the like, you were there.
Yeah. Yeah, the first one he came past and he just drilled it out of the corner. Or sorry, out of the cobble sector. And I got shelled there, but I made it back on like just. And then the next cobble sector, I didn't really like see where the start of it was because I was just like head down, like following the wind. And he just suddenly dived into this sector. And because I initially just went for my brakes, but they were full of dirt, so I wasn't going anywhere. And I straight lined the corner a bit and then hit the sector. And I was already 5 meters off the back. And then I sort of just never made it back on the wheel. But at that point, honestly, even if I followed the wheel, I was gone after that anyway. I think once I got dropped, like once I started running out of energy, I sort of struggled to get in the fuel that I needed to keep going, really.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Was he above everyone else in terms of the way he was managing the cobbles?
I wouldn't say so, no. I think it was a lot of legs, and maybe on the TV, sometimes I think it looks like someone could be really poor at the cobbles, but like if you don't have the legs to go fast, you're going to look terrible on the cobbles. Anyway. If you're doing most of the sectors, you don't ride them as hard as in recon, but most of the sectors you're still riding at 450 to 500. So if you can do that, it doesn't matter. Like you're just going to glide across the top. But if you're getting like real bogged down at the end of every sector, it's just you're going to look terrible riding them no matter what. But in terms of skill, I don't think I'm sure he has far more skill than anyone that was in that little move, but I don't think he had to show it because there was no real need. Like you can just ride a comfortable pace, not really take any risks, and you're going to get back to the front anyway.
Yeah. So you felt comfortable following Van der Poel into those sections because that just seems like the scariest thought ever. That guy.
Yeah, I think I did. I felt uncomfortable towards the end when I like not in skill terms, but in just terms of that I had no legs left, and every time it's really enjoyable almost in the cobble sectors when you're feeling good and you can follow anything, but when you can't, it's probably one of the worst feelings you can have in racing, I think.
Yeah. And then you get that like bogged down, like you said, if you're not on top of the gear and you're also not racing for the win, like
Yeah.
hard out there.
Yeah, especially when you're going backwards, it's different. Maybe if you're coming to the front and you're sort of dying a bit, but when you started at the front and you're coming backwards, and the other thing is, I didn't really know the rest of the roads, and my Garmin screen was covered in mud, so I'm sort of just like real buckled and didn't know how long to finish, didn't know like what was happening. The car was way back, and like I heard Van der Poel was coming, and I was like, oh, I better freshen up a little bit here. And I think I had like a second spurt for a bit, but for the most part, I knew that there was still a long way to go and you can't really hold on 50K of cobbles left.
Yeah. 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 Was it hard managing the mud?
Yeah, I think in the beginning, the first cobble sector, I threw my glasses away just straight away because I didn't want to use water to squirt my lenses every 5 seconds because unless you're on the front, you're getting mud in your face. So I threw them away. And then probably for at least the next 100 kilometers, it was fine just blinking. But then I'm not on TV, but the sun came out a little bit and it dried up. And all the wet mud I had under my eyes had like solidified. So I couldn't blink my eyes anymore. And that like it was so crusty that I just couldn't blink my eyes quick enough. So I can see like mud coming to my eyes, but I can't blink. So it's just hitting my eyes. So you have like the last 50K was just absolutely horrific.
Yeah. And we're like, is it all through your mouth and like as well? Like you're just tasting dirt?
Not so much in my mouth actually. In my ears for sure. Like I was getting dirt out of my ears for at least another week. But yeah, it was just the eyes were the worst part. Maybe it was in my mouth as well, but I was pretty cooked at that point. So
It was a team must have been pretty happy though with one, their result, and also two, you two young guys going at the race, being in the move, having Lotto Sudal as present as they were in the race.
I think so, yeah, because the team's taken a lot of criticism in the last few years about sort of rejuvenating him with younger riders, with the goal of getting them while they're young and developing them into what they want. And I think a lot of that is because they're being compared to teams like UAE that can buy any talent they want in the world and they're all going to perform in any different type of race because they're climbers or GC riders or time trialists. And I think a lot of the point with Lotto is they don't get a lot of time to showcase what they have done with the development of the riders because we're not necessarily the best climbers in the world, but in Florian's case, he'd be one of the best classics riders in the world that's coming through now.
Yeah. Yeah. Like what's going on the inside? Like what's causing in terms of like that development? It seems like it's a good environment for both you, like your year's been out of control, but also starting to see these other guys come through.
I think it's the internal is not what's causing the issue. I think it's the media from the outside. It's always a lot of negative stuff about older guys leaving or younger guys coming in, but I think you're always going to cop that until you start seeing guys succeed. And obviously there's no one on Twitter saying that Lotto's made wrong choices when Florian's second in Roubaix. So yeah, I think it's those things that you're going to always just get a bad rap about, really.
Yeah. Yeah. Is it cool being in a Belgian team in a sport like that's so big in their country, like playing AFL and being from Melbourne or NRL and being from Queensland?
I think so, yeah. You see a lot of fans, particularly around those areas. And even when I got dropped from the move and Phil came past me actually, and I rode with Phil and three other guys for about 20K, like just doing turns with Phil, just because it's iconic with Phil he's the reigning champ of Roubaix. And it's a bit of an honor. So that was unreal. Like you're riding past huge crowds and everyone's cheering your name, like Phil's name, Lotto. It's really special.
Yeah. Like onto your year as a whole, it's been unbelievable. Like from an Australian spectator, did I just underestimate you, or like what did you expect this kind of success as a neo pro on Lotto?
I think a lot of it, to be honest, was I'm not sure I had that much faith in myself beforehand when I turned pro in the first place. Like I thought maybe a lot of my results before were down to flukes or something, but I think I knew that I sort of had the level to be there, but I knew that it was going to be hard to get there. And I think with the belief that Lotto had in me sort of really spurred me on there in a lot of ways. But yeah, the year that I've had as a neo pro has been unreal, and like to get opportunities to go to races that I have is another thing entirely from what you're capable of. So a lot of it's down to the team actually having the faith to put me in those races. But yeah, I think, I don't know. I guess in my under 23s, I sort of lost a fair bit of belief, just like with injury and accidents and just not going well over the years, especially in the first 2 years when I was in Mitchelton. And then it was more in the last few years of my under 23s to sort of get some faith back into who I was as a rider.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, was there anything that clicked? Was there anything that, I don't know, changed that, or like that kind of helped that progression?
I think definitely fueling properly for training would be one.
Did you get caught up in like the trying to get lean all the time?
Big time in the under 23 program, because there's no space for a rider like me in that program. Well, at least that was my vision. Like, you, in that program, you're only good to them if you're one of the best up and coming under 23 climbers in the world, GC riders or time trialists. And if you're anything apart from that, you're working into the bottom of the Poggio or whatever climb you're doing, and then that's your day done. So you never sort of come into a race and you're like, this is my day today, the team's going to work for me. And I think that was really difficult for me coming out of under 19s, where I've been like time trial champ and stuff, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to hit this well. And then as I developed as a rider, I got heavier and heavier, just because that's how my body developed. And I think that's sort of a bit of a wormhole that I went down with the under 23 program, is I was like, if I have to make it here, then this is the only way. And I think it took leaving that program and sort of being like, if I make it, I make it. If I don't, I don't. And taking all that pressure off. And I think that's sort of when I started to thrive a little bit with Lotto.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's interesting. That's very good analysis, because that looked like reflecting that. That's very true. Because who are your teammates in that under 23 squad?
Michael Storer, Jai Hindley, Lucas Hamilton, Callum Scottson, Rob Banner, Sam Jenner, and Drew Morey.
Yeah, so all of which bar two are pros and very good climbers. Yeah,
so, and also the place where you live and the racing that you're doing, like, even if they did support a rider that was a classics type, you do one race a year that's similar. Like, you might start Roubaix and that's about it. So it's not like a criticism, but I think it's just something that you have to be really in tune with yourself in what direction you want to go, because as such a young person going to a team like that, it seems like there's only one avenue you can go down. And I think over the years, you can see that it's pigeonholed a lot of guys that could potentially have had incredible pro careers, because I think I got in my own head a lot about it, that was going to be the be all end all. And if I didn't make it in that team, then there's no way I'm going to make it. And that's just absolutely not true for so many people.
Yeah. But then, yeah, but at the same time, if you fit the brief, then it's out of control. Yeah. It's the best in the world.
Yeah.
Well, it was the best in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was the best in the world at what it did, but not necessarily other things. Like, when I went to Lotto under 23 and I joined, and it was like, guys, just instead of guys having everything monitored, it was like, do what you need to do to be well, show up on race day, and you better be going well. And everyone, like, you show up, flying, great atmosphere, nothing like held over your head about performance data and watts per kilo and all this rubbish. It's like, you come to a dirty Flemish race that's pouring rain and you race hard, get a result, and you go home and do whatever you want. And I think it sort of took me that to reset and sort of discover how I needed to live to perform well, and then do the rest of it later.
Yeah. Yeah. I get that. It's like, it's almost like that program. You were kind of so babied into, or so controlled in every single thing that you had. There was no real space for you to go your own way. There was no real space for you to just go, you know what, this is what I need to do. This is the responsibility is on you. Harry, Alex, like, do the work, get it done.
Yeah, especially even say you're a great under 23 in the world. If you're not one of the best on that team, it wasn't really the done thing to sort of go to another team. It was like, you have the spots on Mitchelton, and if you're not the best on the team, you're sort of done for. Whereas any other team, I think it should be, if you're a good under 23, you're a good under 23, and you should be able to have your opportunity to perform at some race in the year, instead of, it's like that team was sort of like an Ineos of under 23 because they've got you've got guys that could win in their own rights or are great riders in their own rights riding for someone else to ensure that you're going to have a result. Whereas I think under 23 needs to step back and sort of realize that it's about development more than that.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you're an under 23 now, that program's no longer. So that's not even an option. And the programs that are an option are few and far between. And to even get the opportunity to get to like a Lotto Soudal like you did, or an Axion, like it's hard out there. It's hard yards, especially as an Australian. Like what should you be looking for in an under 23 squad?
I think honestly, you'd have to start as an under 19 first and get to Europe in whatever capacity that is. And that's what I did the first time to get on the under 23 team. Actually, I was on the radar, but I found my own way to Belgium, did some races and won a few. And that's sort of what piqued their interest a little bit. So I think in the absence of that under 23 team, you're going to be going over in order to pique the absence of another European team. But yeah, it is getting quite few and far between now that SEG's folded as well. But I think it is really the only way for an Australian. I think the NRS is on its way to becoming a little bit obsolete. Like it's not the same as it was in 2015 when you had Paddy Bevan, Joe Cooper and all these big hitters that you knew were world class. So yeah, I think it's more about just getting yourself out there. Like you see the Benelong guys now, I think they've come with the same strategy as they have to come to Europe in order to make it. And that's the only way.
Yeah. Those guys are making the ultimate sacrifice right now. Like going to Europe, knowing I'm not coming back. Like that's full grind.
Yeah, I do like it. I think you sort of have to have nothing to lose in order to make it at the moment. I saw that when I was on Evo Pro as you're sort of just living a life that's entirely aimed at trying to make it pro because there's not really much else that you can do or even afford to do. So I think it made me sort of realize that if I wanted to make it, it was going to happen. And if I didn't make it, then that was sort of it really. And it was that pressure that was taken off that sort of enabled me.
Yeah. When was the year at Evo Pro?
In 2018. Oh, yeah. Wait, no. 2019. I did 17, 18 at Mitchelton. Then they stopped. And then 19 at Evo Pro and 20 at under 23 Lotto.
What was the year at Evo Pro like?
It was full of ups and downs, really. It's probably a whole episode in itself, but in essence, it enabled me to realize what I was capable of as a rider, regardless of how good or bad the setup was. I have respect for what he's doing because he's, I think, made a lot of riders realize that they can make it again that have sort of been thrown to the side. Like Archibald, he's back in the pro ranks. There's Gady, I think he's going really well again. It sort of was a team of a lot of misfits, and that's what made it really fun, is we were sort of just tripping around Europe, all the riders having the vans, and you're just racing for the love of it and trying to make it pro as a sort of like a side hustle almost. So
yeah.
It was the most fun year I've ever had by far, just because of that. Like everyone knew that everyone else that you're racing with had like an absolute battle in the last few years. So it made it, everyone that was there would have your back and like it'd be good fun. And that was really sort of what helped me, I think.
Has that paved the way in your approach in a sense? Like it feels like since we did that first podcast, like I knew who you were as a person, like knew your personality and you, like you're a funny, genuine Aussie guy. But like a lot of people, they do any kind of interview or media or whatnot, and they're like a bit just like standoffish, quiet, don't want to say too much in the world tour in my first Neo Pro year. But you were not bold and over the top, but just like you could have genuine conversation off the first year, and it seemed like you were just having a good time at the Tour de France.
Well, yeah, that's what it was really like, actually. I think I went in with the mindset that you have to enjoy it, and if you're not enjoying it, there's not really much point doing it. Like when in 2020, I said, if I don't make it, I don't make it, and I'll go and move on to do something else. Like, it wasn't the be all end all that I was going to become a pro cyclist. I think I had such a bad time for 2 years in Mitchelton, just mentally, I guess, that I was almost ready to leave cycling. Like, if I couldn't make it, I wasn't going to be that cut up about it, and I could move on with my life. And it took me that to realize that, like, you have to enjoy it, and if you don't, then even if you make it pro, you're not going to have a long career anyway, so there's not really much point. So it took me somewhere that I could really fit in as a rider to then be able to enjoy it and just love it. Like, if I couldn't, say I moved to another team, I wouldn't necessarily enjoy it as much as I do at Lotto, because I know that I fit in here, and that's what makes you enjoy it. That's what makes you go well. And like, if I'm riding up a climb in the Tour and every guy next to me is just absolutely hating his life, but I'm enjoying it, like enjoying the crowds, the last big climb of the Tour or something, and you're just really like frothing the moment. There's nothing. You're getting paid to ride your bike. You live in a beautiful place. And then there's guys that are obsessing over everything about it. And I think that's what kills it a little bit, as you see guys that are unhappy in their first year pro. And I think it really shouldn't be like that.
It's easier said than done, though. Like,
yeah,
like you said, it's like you had your years at Mitchelton. Like, if you're under the pump pressure, results wise, you're stressing about this new team, you're worried about your weight, worried about your watts, you're worried about your living scenario. It can be pretty hard to be happy at the same time.
It is, for sure. I think I lived at least 3 years of my life being unhappy with where I was at, or at least 2. And when I was on Evo Pro, I was sort of tunnel vision to make it to pro ranks. And it's a lot easier said than done, being in, like, now that I've made it pro and I'm settled in and I'm really comfortable with where I'm at. But say, like, if you interviewed me in the end of 2018, it would have been completely different. And I think that's all part of it, is that not the mental struggle, but like having the fortitude to make it past those bad moments, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it really depends. Like, if you're in a situation where you're actually having real mental health struggles or eating problems, like, it's not something that you can push through. Like, you actually need help with that. And I don't think it's something that you can just be like, I need to enjoy myself and it will all go away.
Yeah, I'm just going to get on the piss every weekend and party all the time.
Yeah, I think it's us, like, hardening up something that's said a lot in cycling, but there's only very few cases where you can actually do that, I think.
Yeah. But when you can get to the scenario that you're in now, and you're enjoying, like you said, riding the last climb at Tour de France, and you're enjoying the crowds, you get results too. Things start to click.
It does start to click. And I think it literally is all down to having the pressure off from, not from the outside, but more just from me, because that's where all the pressure came from in the first place. Was you see guys that make it pro so easily from under 23s, like they come in and win one race and they go pro, or even as an under 19. And I remember thinking, like, it's not happening for me. But it's not until you sort of just realize that everyone has their own different pathway that it's actually clicked for me. And it's so easy to look back on now and say, like, like it was an easy journey or something, but it really wasn't. And I had a real hard time to get here. But now I get here is what's made me so happy with where I'm at.
Yeah. Yeah. Was there any hurdles this year? So starting out as a neo pro, I assume you're in Belgium last year, and then you moved down south to France.
There was actually a lot. So I couldn't get a visa in Belgium, so I had to fly back to Australia to get a visa for France. That got denied on the 1st of January, and I had to fly. Training camp was starting on the 5th, bearing in mind
of Jan.
Yeah. So
with a brand new team. What first impressions?
And I called up. I was like, look, I can't get a visa. So I reapplied. I hadn't signed my lease yet. I was sort of stringing them along, like, yeah, I've got my visa. I just need to wait until I can pay the deposit. think my visa was approved on the 15th of January or something. So I was late for training camp already. And then visa got approved. I signed the paperwork, sent my deposit for my apartment, flew directly to Spain for training camp. And then I flew from training camp directly to Nice. And it was the first time I'd ever been here. And I had all my possessions just on the street and just waiting for the person to let me in. It was the first time I'd been here. And then like I settled in, but everything was in lockdown. So it was really, I don't know what the word, it was a really isolating feeling being in lockdown in a new city, not knowing the language, not having your bearings at all. You can't go outside after 5 p.m. Yeah, it was really strange, but I think I got over that a lot with the support of my family, because I knew it was going to happen. Like, a lot of the reason I moved here was so I could have that isolation feeling. So it forced me to develop a life here.
Yeah. So you reckon that's good for you? Because like
Absolutely.
Nice is beautiful. Like, it's so nice. And like there's Aussies down the road in Monaco and whatnot, but like it's also awfully isolating. It's a long way from, you say, where everyone normally goes to Girona. And if you go there, you can see why. It's like there's bros everywhere. There's people to hang out with, people to chat to.
It's absolutely sorry.
Yeah.
Absolutely why I moved here is because when I was in Girona, I never had the feeling that I had to work on my life. I got the feeling that everyone there was content doing nothing, or just being like who they were and hanging out with everyone that they already knew. And it wasn't until I moved here and I knew that it was going to happen, but it was scary in the moment when you're isolated and you know no one, but it forces you to sort of think like, if I just had any other regular job that wasn't cycling, I'm not going to be hanging out with my cycling mates all the time. So why don't I like actually try and make a life for myself? So that's sort of what I did here, I guess, is I wanted to make it so that I could have a life outside of cycling and live in Europe. And that's what I'm trying to do here, is have friends that aren't cyclists, people I can hang out with that don't know what a bike is and like think it's cool that I'm doing the tour or whatever it is. And I think that's a massive reason, is because so many guys, like if you have a bad day in a race and you have to come back to Girona and bump into someone that you raced that day that you like pushed off the road or something, like you're not going to have a good time. And
yeah, or even like that's the guy that you go to like get rid of the feelings that you built up that week tour that you'd been at, you had a terrible time.
Yeah, there's absolutely no switching off, but for sure it was really out of my comfort zone. Like I thought it was going to be a great idea and I stand by it, but I didn't realize how hard it actually would be to come out of my comfort zone like that. Like given I have like a few guys in Monaco up the road, but in Nice I'm really quite isolated from cycling. And it did take a lot of effort, because I don't think a lot of people, especially in Australia, realize that you don't actually consciously build your life. Like it sort of just happens as you grow up. And then when you move somewhere as isolating as this, you have to like consciously be like, I'm going to go out for a walk today to try and meet someone. And that's bizarre thing. I was skating along the promenade and I just hope that I bumped into someone and like just made a friend. And that's actually what happened, is I met some people along the promenade and now I have some friends here.
And so you're speaking French, like you're doing the full.
I honestly haven't been very good with it lately, but now my girlfriend came, I think a month ago now, and we're going to try and learn in the winter, like when I'm fully relaxed and I don't have anything to do really. And it really helps having someone else to learn it with. So that'll be good. There is a French school in Villefranche where you come away speaking French after. I think Rob's going there actually, but it's quite expensive. So we're going to try it the old-fashioned way for a little bit and see how it goes.
Yeah, because like France is the deep end. I feel like from the countries that I've been to, if you rank them on Australia-esque or the Australian traits that they have, like France must be at the bottom. the hardest of them all, the most isolating of them all. And it's all well and good to say like, oh, I'm going to go there and I'm going to get myself in the community and I'm going to learn French and I'll be having baguettes for lunch and croissants for breakfast in no time. But that's a massive thing to do. Like that's a really hard step to make.
It is for sure. I think what's helped it along the way is that I had a few people I knew already, just the right amount, but also it's probably the least French place in France here. Like it almost is a little Australia in terms of the landscape and the water. But yeah, for a lot of people do speak English here, which is sort of like a nice safety net in some ways, but it's definitely French in the way that they don't want to speak English to you. So it forced me to know enough to sort of get by, and without really properly learning it, it's hard to move past that initial step. But in day-to-day life, I am making an effort to try and speak French to French people and understand. Like yesterday, I went to buy a car and I was trying to haggle the price down, but the guy didn't speak any English and he was like telling me all the modifications it had done to it. And I was like, I'm not going to be able to get this guy down on the price.
Hang on. Were you at like a Porsche shop yesterday?
I was looking online just for like a day-to-day car and I stumbled across, it's called Sunny Speed Shop, and they had like all these outrageous cars in there. They had a Koenigsegg Regera in there, 1.7 million euro. They had Ferrari F40, all these outrageous cars. And then in the back corner is this little Renault Clio Sport, which I used to have in Australia, and I knew how much fun they were. So I went in to have a look at it, test drove it, and I bought it. So they're doing all the rego documents at the moment. But yeah, like this shop was just incredible. They had a shop dog there, took my girlfriend and they gave her like a trip around the shop. But yeah, I definitely wasn't buying a Porsche.
I was gonna say that didn't look like you just go buy your everyday car from that store.
No, absolutely not.
So your mates in Nice, they're speaking English?
Some of them are French, some of them are English, some are Irish, but yeah, for the most part, they're English speaking. They all speak English at least, yeah.
And you're just hanging out as mates. Nothing, no connections to the sport, no connections to
No, one of them works as a bartender and the other one works at like a consultancy office in Nice here. So it's like literally nothing. Like I come back from the tour and just come and have a beer with them at their work. It's really like normal life, and that's what I missed.
Wow. Well, but it makes sense. It starts to, I don't know, for me, it starts to make the picture as to why this year has been so successful. It's like,
yeah, I think a lot of guys, I think, are focused on everything before, but I think what has to come first is that you're happy in normal life. And I think a lot of the new physiological like studies have figured out that like life stresses aren't adding to your training. It's really taking away from training stimulus. So I think the first step is to make sure that you don't have many life stresses and that you enjoy your normal life, and then you build from there.
Yeah. We've done a couple of episodes like around that. One, Jason Backer, one of the sports managers, he talks about like when he signs a rider or they have the Neo Pro contract, he encourages them to spend most of their contract, just like set it all up, buy everything, like buy things like you're going to be there for the next 30 years.
I did listen. I think it was when it came out, I listened to it because I was in the process of getting to grips with it. I was not in a big contract. I was moving to somewhere else and I was like, I don't have any money to save, but I also don't have enough money to spend it on stuff. But I listened to that and I was like, it does actually make a lot of sense. So like, it's hard to be like, I'm going to spend all my bank balance or like a lot of it on getting a car. But like, it makes sense because I'm not coming back for winter. I'm going to be here for at least another year until I come home. So it makes sense to be set up as you would in any other job.
Yeah. But like also just not have that environment feeling like it should be anything else besides your home. You're not on a holiday. You're not in an Airbnb. You're not I've got my nice house back in Brizzy that I'm going to go back to. You're at home now.
Yeah, I think a lot of the problems that I had in terms of like whether I thought I would make it as a pro were when I sort of realized it was at the start of the year when I wouldn't really want to buy much stuff here because I was like, what if I don't make it? Then I have to do something with it all.
Yeah.
But at least until probably Dauphiné to realize that I actually do fit in the pro peloton and I will make it, that I was like, maybe I should really properly invest in being set up well here. And for sure, it's something that's normal to experience. Like when you move to another country and like, is it going to work out? But at the end of the day, like the money that you make as a neo pro, as Jason said, is literally nothing compared to what you'll make if you have a successful career. So you might as well make yourself happy and set yourself up well.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're not buying sports cars, but like the place that your environment around you is nice. And then combining that with your investment of time in making friends, getting settled in the community and whatnot, like I think it's a big tick. And then from a excuse me, from a scientific point of view, we did a podcast with David Spindler and his PhD is on happy watts. Is like it's a thing.
Yeah.
Like if you're happy with your surroundings, your cognitive load is less and you'll perform better. Things are good.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of people use it as, I don't know, a bit of a joke, but I think a lot of the new science coming out is that it's absolutely a thing and that happy people perform a lot better. And I almost entirely attribute my success to either being happy with where I'm at or actively working towards it and feeling content with that and having self-belief.
Yeah. Yeah. That was a good app, Harry. Congrats on a massive year. It's good to wrap it up. And it was a nice finishing touch with a highly successful Roubaix to put a tie on the year. Enjoy your off season.
Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
We'll chat soon.
Sounds great.